do the introduction.
Joe. Right, we're recording. Where's the wee button? Here we go.
Good evening and welcome to the Gallant Few podcast. This is the weekly update for the Premier League show, usually hosted by our lovely Mason, but unfortunately wanted a night off. So myself, Jamie Royals, has offered to step in, and I've got the usual suspects to help me get through the pickings of the weekend. I'll kick off first. We've got Colin McDuff. Colin, how's things?
I'm good, Jamie. I'm good. Cheers for having me on as always. I'm looking forward to another action-packed agenda for the Premier League.
Have you got to the point of where you're watching Match of the Day on a Saturday night yet, or are you getting it on a Monday morning?
Nah, I like it a Sunday morning, you know.
That's
It's
Sunday morning, are you?
fresh Sundays catch up, and then by that point, somebody said something controversial on Twitter as well, so I can go straight on to the arguments. You know, sometimes the nonsense on Twitter's more exciting than Gary Lineker's chat.
Well, yeah, he's been fun at the weekend. We've also got the lovely Graham Campbell, who has graced us after his absence last week. Graham, how's things?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for having me on. Unlike what Colin was saying, I prefer to throw in watching Mark Chapman and Match of the Day 2 during my lunch hour on a Monday. That's what I did this week. So, yeah, hopefully I've captured what I need to capture, the short highlights I was able to catch.
Not a problem. Well, what I'll do is I'll run through. I've kind of picked out a few of the hot topics from the weekend. I will say that the weekend has probably been not as controversial as last weekend when it comes to VAR, but there is still a few, I think, shall we say, shock results that will probably give us enough to talk about today. And I don't think we can start anywhere apart from league leaders, Arsenal, who were the doomed early kickoff and actually put in a barnstorming 4-2 win. Colin, you obviously watched the game and Match of the Day. What was your thoughts based on what we said last week, which was that we expected Arsenal to probably have a bit of a dip now? I think there were 2 games without a win at this point, and obviously it was going to be a tricky game going into Saturday morning.
They made an absolute mug of me, Jamie. After the Man City game, I said to you boys that I don't see Arteta or Arsenal having the bottle or having the character to dig deep and see it out. And I thought when it went 1-0 to Villa, I thought, here we go. Big Colin knows his stuff, but they've made an absolute mug of me. Credit where credit's due. I think they're obviously a bit shaken after the recent run of form that they've had. And I mean, I know it was 2 games without a win, but maybe 2-3 weeks ago that they dropped points as well. Same weekend, City dropped points. So they have been struggling for form, and you could see there was a nervousness and an anxiousness about them, and that translated into particularly the first half. But I thought that last half hour they kept on digging, and fair play to them. You've put in the agenda a bit of grit. It's not something that even at their best we've really associated with Arsenal this year. It's been that typical Arsenal of old, very free-flowing, good passing, attacking football. We've not really seen the character come out. So I'm not going to hang my hat in them winning the league. This is very much an outlier when it comes to character, I think, but it's certainly a good start.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It was a gritty performance. They went behind twice and they managed to come back and done it all good. Graham, this was the first time we managed to see the likes of Jorginho, starting in the absence of Partey, who's been absolutely crucial for them. Any thoughts on Jorginho and his role and how he played in the game?
Yeah, I think some of the points made about Arsenal recently was just kind of some of their transfers more based around strengthening their squad rather than getting a couple of big hitters that you would expect to see walk straight into a starting 11. Obviously, as Colin's pointed out, they were fortunate that would have been 4 games without a win in the Premier League, and actually they wouldn't have won any game since the 22nd of January. So then suddenly you're a calendar month since winning a game, so it was huge. Obviously, Jorginho gets the goal in the last minute. I'm still a bit iffy on should that stand or not? I don't know if the rule was more to do with because Martinez wasn't ever getting near it. Certainly 2 offside players standing kind of between Martinez and the ball. Thought that was quite lucky. In terms of Jorginho and his role for Arsenal, it's an interesting one. A lot of the pundits, a lot of guys that know a hell of a lot more about football than I do, obviously suggesting that he really doesn't slot into the way Arsenal play. A different kind of player to what they would expect Arsenal to want. But listen, I do think he's going to do a really good job. I think he will cement his place in the team. And we'd spoke about in terms of Arsenal's chance to the title, they do need a bit of luck, and I do feel like they got that on Saturday. And then Man City don't follow up against Nottingham Forest. So, I mean, big weekend for them for sure.
See, on that Jorginho no really fitting into the mould of Arsenal, that's probably a good thing. If we look at how this season might pan out, maybe we need somebody in Arsenal to maybe do the unglamorous dirty work, particularly if it might be a case of who's going to drop the least points out of them and City. And there might be a few 1-0 wins that Arsenal need to get over the line, get an early goal, and just need to see out games. And that's not something I've always had the confidence that they're going to do. Maybe Jorginho helps fill that gap.
I think one of the big things for me is I'm not necessarily a Jorginho fan. However, you kind of got to respect what he's won as a player, and actually bringing that into the team is probably what actually is the biggest benefit. Is, without a good heat that's lasted that long until the end of the season and won these kind of titles, they kind of respect him. They've got him on their side. So I think he offers more than just his playing attributes to an Arsenal team. I think it's probably his all round demeanour on how he approaches the games. Maybe he's a good laugh in the changing rooms, kind of keeping it real with them. I was impressed with Martinelli. Sorry, with the fact that he dropped Martinelli, because Martinelli's obviously a fan favourite. But having Martinelli off the bench is obviously a massive, big, plus for a team to have, because I don't think there's many defenders at right back or left back that want to go against his pace 80 minutes into a game, and it kind of told, didn't it, with the 2 goals coming late on. So no, very good win for Arsenal. They are now 2 points top of the league, because that brings on to our next point, which is obviously the turnaround, which is City. It's at Nottingham Forest. City, for albeit led for the best part of, they scored very early, and they probably led for the best part of 80 minutes. And then Forest, Chris Wood gets his first goal for Nottingham Forest. Colin, your thoughts on that? And I've kind of wrote City's draw a shock, or actually, is it a shock?
Well, again, just I'm not going to. I'm not. I'm not going to go back on what I was saying last week and now pretend that I'm this in all insightful football and God. I thought Man City were going to really just be ruthless and hammer home a big run after Wednesday night. Wednesday night I seen being a massive turning point, but there is a few more turns in this deal. If City play how they played on Wednesday night, they're going to be empty, but that's been the problem, that they're not as ruthless or not as clinical as they have been, even with Erling Haaland. They can be quite wasteful, and they dominated the ball. They'd never looked uncomfortable in the game, but they've just no killed Nottingham Forest off, and that has been a big problem for them so far this season. They've just not had that killer edge, and it's a bit bizarre when you look at the stats that Haaland is racking up, and just what he's adding in terms of focal point to their game. So, it is still a surprise after Wednesday, but if you look at the season as a whole, then they are going to slip up again between now and the end of the season.
Graham, for you, was it Forest winning a point, or was it City losing 2 points? And I say that on the basis that Keylor Navas had an absolute barnstormer of a game. Not to mention, Forest have actually taken a few scalps at their own ground this season. Not to mention, obviously, Liverpool at the beginning of the season. Was this a big thing for who was this bigger for? Was it a bigger point game for Forest, or was it two bigger points drop for City?
I think before the game, the result itself, looking at it, isn't a shock when you look at kind of the inconsistency of Man City this season and actually recent form of Forest. However, if you look at the game on its own merit, yeah, it is a shock because Man City get the goal kind of just before half time, but the amount of possession and chances they had were pretty nuts, to be honest. And you wouldn't expect Haaland to miss. I mean, the win from 6 yards out is just criminal. I mean, when you're playing Man City at home, you're kind of holding it, and you go 2 down, that's probably game over. So, yeah, on its own merit, I think the result was a shock because how the game panned out. So, absolutely 2 points drop from Man City. And that's what Pep says after the game. He says, we may have all the possession, that's fine, but we're spurning chances, and they are not going to win the league with a sort of kind of inconsistencies and chances that are spurning for sure.
What's your thoughts on him rotating Mahrez, who's been arguably one of the best players since the turn of the year?
Pep always rotates, and I think anyone that has a fantasy Premier League team will probably curse Pep most weeks because of his rotation, whether that's Mahrez, whether that's De Bruyne, or honestly anyone. So that's Pep, and I get they have a big squad full of big egos, and that's going to happen from time to time. They do, of course, have other players that are banging for him. Grealish is now starting to really step up. So when it comes to rotation with Guardiola, it absolutely doesn't surprise me.
In the fantasy football world, we call it Pep Roulette because he literally spins a wheel and we don't know who he's going to land on to start the game. So yeah, nothing to banker at the moment. Okay, so what probably brings us on to the third point. So one of the third points, and obviously a bit close to home for me, a big 3 points for Liverpool on the late game on Saturday evening. The only team to have beaten Newcastle this season, and they've done it twice at Anfield's on the 98th minute, and obviously it's Saturday at St James's Park. Did you get a chance to watch that game? What was your thoughts on it, Colin? Sorry.
I've actually only seen the goals and the highlights. I think the Pope sending off gave us all a chuckle. That's probably the first highlight we've all watched. That is. Some of the pundits saying he's unlucky. I think it just looks bizarre, man. He's got all the grace in me and to do the time up after a few pints.
I was going to say, Jamie, I don't know if you'd prayed before the match because of the Pope intervention or not, but when you look at actually what happened, there was a moment earlier on in that half where he was out his line by I don't know, let's say 40 yards and headed it, and he was trying to do the exact same thing again. He just completely misjudged out at the ball, and he actually closed his eyes before he went for the header. So it was just the most bizarre thing, and obviously, look, nobody will be kicking himself more than him because he's going to miss the Carabao Cup final, and Loris Karius, who I'm sure is one of your heroes, Jamie, is going to be is going to be the third choice keeper that's going to need to start the game on Sunday. So I mean, so many ramifications for such a wild kind of piece of luck.
Can I just say for the listeners, obviously this is an audio-only podcast, the fucking gleaming cheeser in Graham Campbell's face when he was ready to come in with that Pope joke there. He's been hanging about this all day. That was an absolute joy to see. I was wondering what he was going to come away with.
And can I just say that the huge laughs I got from those two, I mean, they might have been on mute, but the laughs were there to see.
Credit where credit's due. I put myself on mute and absolutely buckled. But taking away from Bob, Jamie, I thought the Liverpool goals were really well taken. Mostly Gapco, he's maybe on the lane a wee bit, but the Nunez goal I absolutely loved. Trent Alexander-Arnold has had the greatest season. I don't think many for Liverpool can come away saying that, but a beautiful ball and Darwin Nunez, nobody's talked about that finish enough. I think it's an absolute beautiful touch and finish. Everybody's talking about the pass, but that boy's a baller.
Do you know what he does? He laces it every time. And if you go back to the beginning of the season, he was lacing them as well. It was just obviously going, like a 50 pence piece off the other side. But he absolutely laced that one at the weekend. And as you said, it was a brilliant finish. Graham, what about you? Obviously, I know, take the Pope thing aside, in terms of the 3 points for Liverpool and obviously Newcastle's charge, where do we sit? Because I know you weren't on last week. Newcastle kind of dipped a little bit, haven't they?
They have, but yeah, I wasn't on last week again. A couple of weeks ago, I think I'd mentioned about the schedule Liverpool had, and it was probably one of the lightest in a while. Probably that that's definitely going to be a factor. And I did genuinely fancy them to go on a wee bit of a run. I think that's, you can correct me if I'm wrong, two wins, 2 clean sheets now. They're not that far behind. They've got a game in hand on the kind of pack above them. I do absolutely fancy Liverpool to. It'll be a fourth or fifth, but fourth or fifth mob. But I think if they go on a decent run, that I do think they will. I think Liverpool will grab fourth spot this season. So yeah, good result. And yeah, Cody Gakpo is now kind of finding the net, which is obviously going to be a good thing for you. And I agree with Colin. You know, Nunes took his goal really well, and I think everyone's saying if they can get him on the form that well, the reason he's bottom, then he is going to be a phenomenal player for us.
I think if I was to balance it out, and I can be overcritical purely for the fact I'm a Liverpool fan, is that there were still moments in the game where we didn't play great. You know, defensively we looked a bit shaky, and it was probably more to do with Alan St. Maximum's running. Like when that boy's got the ball, you're just too fear to touch him because obviously he goes down because he's so rapid. And there was at times they looked as though they had 11 players. You forgot that they actually had 10 because of the way they controlled the ball sometimes. So I still think there's room for improvement for Liverpool. I think Becker Allison was absolutely tremendous on the day. I would like to get your thoughts on Becker Allison because he's kind of been, an unsung hero a little bit. If you look at this season as an example, he's been at Liverpool now for a good few years. He's pretty much won everything at Liverpool. Where does he rank for you, Colin, in terms of the Premier League or the world?
He's a very, very talented keeper. I think he's still showing. I think he's still prone to a bombshell every now and then.
Okay.
You'll be a lot closer to it than I did. I think maybe 2 years ago, was it 2 3 years ago? He was absolutely peak up there, probably best in the world. But I don't know if he's in the conversation in the top 5, definitely. But I think he's still prone to a bombshell every now and then. But I don't know if that's maybe just a bit of symbolism for the way Liverpool are right now.
Graham?
The biggest thing I've got to say on this is I always thought his name was Alison Becker. So, I mean, straight off the bat, I'm completely thrown off by this Becker Allison nonsense.
To be fair, he's got about 5 names. He just goes by the 2. Most Brazilians do, don't they?
Fair enough. I hope I'm not the only one that's baffled by this Becker Allison, but there you go. Yeah, good keeper, no doubts. Solid. Definitely kind of pushing a top 5 keeper in the world. I think on his day, yeah, he's excellent. Like some keepers, he's prone to error. Obviously, at the World Cup, the Brazil manager fancied him over Ederson. I think it just depends. It's all about the way you want to play and how you want to work it. For example, Pep's never going to fancy an Alisson, I don't think. He's always going to go more than Ederson. It just depends how you want to play. And he has a good goalie though. And obviously, if he's on form, then yeah, start for the back, work your way forward. He's going to be a big player.
Good. And I'll mention one last thing. So Loris Karius, obviously he has to play this Sunday due to the fact that Dubravka was on loan at Manchester United earlier this season and played for them a couple of times. So they've either got Loris Karius, or I think they've got like an under-19 goalkeeper who's never really played a game for them. Loris Karius' last actual game in England for an English team was obviously that Champions League final. So it'll be interesting to see how we go on. I think Klopp was asked after the game, and Klopp went, "They're in safe hands." Don't know if that was a bit tongue in cheek, but yeah, I think them not having Pope for this weekend is going to be a big miss, diving heater or not.
Man U fans will love Karius even more if he has a repeat on Sunday.
Over a kick.
I think he's already high in their hero list.
And that brings us nicely on to Manchester United. So obviously they won again. I know we asked this a couple of weeks ago, and Graham, you were very, very refuted. Like, no, I don't fancy them to be within the title. I've got them down as there's 5 points in it. You still have that same thoughts, which you know.
Yeah, I think at the time, I guess I just saw it as a 2-horse race. Listen, when we're on the talking about goalkeepers, obviously De Gea made a couple of stunning saves against Leicester at the weekend. Now, there's a guy that couldn't even get in the Spain squad, a guy that's kind of just falling out of favour in terms of your top goalkeepers in the world. So again, like Alisson, if you've got your keeper in top form, then yes, of course, anything's possible. Man, you do have a great squad of players, there's no doubt. They'll definitely finish in the top three they'll definitely finish in the top four at least. But do I think they're going to charge the title? No. I still don't think they'll win the league. I think it will be between Arsenal and Man City. I don't think Man U have it in them to go on a really long run. And it'll be interesting, especially if they stay in the Europa League. So that's a big game against Barca midweek, and then obviously they've got Newcastle. See if they win a cup, maybe that gives them a bit more momentum. But to answer your question, no, I don't think they'll win the league this season. But I think Ten Hag is going to build something really good. He is obviously an excellent coach, and I would imagine that maybe they'll win the league at least once in the next year or two for sure.
Colin, and the enigma Rashford, he's still going. He obviously got a couple at the weekend. What's your thoughts?
When we talk about players being in the elite in the position, he is world class right now on form. He's been absolutely phenomenal, and he has maybe papered over a few cracks for Man U. I agree with Graham that the Man U over the next 18 months, if they keep on going in this trajectory, then it is going to be an exciting team to watch, and I think they will be challenging. But my issue with Man U is they are taking their chances. They are clinical, and Rashford is a big part of that. They're not dominating games when they should be. But if you look at Leicester game on Saturday there, or Sunday, sorry, I mean Leicester should have been 2-3-0 up if it wasn't for De Gea, and that has been Man U. I don't want to say rode your luck. That's what you buy a good keeper for, but they are letting teams into it, and there is an argument to say that it's an art to see it out and just take your chances. But getting to the business end, I don't think that'll be enough to see them win the league. Maybe depending on the consistency of Arsenal, Man City, maybe a second, but Marcus Rashford, it's that man that's really that is the main goal threat right now, and I think he really is world class. If he can keep in this level of form, or even 75% that going into next season, and Man U can build around him, then it'd be really good to see them get a good start to the season.
I was really impressed with him at the Nou Camp last week in the Europa League as well. He was absolutely brilliant and controlled the game to some extent. So now he's obviously on this mad rich vein of form, as we talked about. I've got a question relating to Manchester United. It's not necessarily directly to do with the football, but it's probably to do with the biggest news that's come out of them in the last few weeks. So they've obviously had the club up for sale. And they had a soft deadline for last Friday for any interested parties to make their official bids. Now, we only know of two bids that have came in so far and made themselves public, and one is an American consortium fronted by I forget the gentleman's name now, and they've also got a Qatari bid in, and I suppose really my question is, before Newcastle sold to the Qatari team, the Qatari states, if you like, there was this uproar, shall we say, about where the money was coming from, the human rights acts, all these, whether it was feeding into the clubs. I suppose really what I'm wanting to understand is, not just myself, do we actually care about these kind of things as fans? Take Man United out of the equation. If it was Rangers, for example, and you had these two offers on the table, do you look for something specific in these kind of people that look to own clubs, or is it just all about getting yourself competing with the most money available? Colin, I'll come to you first, if that's okay.
We're football fans, so we're all hypocrites. I mean, let's just play cards on the table. It's all fine and well being romantic and sticking by your morals until somebody comes up and say, listen, we can buy you the Champions League. It'd be the same for Rangers as well. Right now, I know the type of owner that I'd want for Rangers. It's easy for me to say that because nobody from the Middle East wants to buy a Scottish Premier League club. So it's an easy answer to say, nah, I don't want your dirty money, whatever. If that if that fantasy was to become a reality, it becomes a lot more difficult. And I think the more it goes on, the less we care about it. Man U, if Man U were to be state owned by a Middle East club, I think that changes the landscape of it. Newcastle, there was a lot of heat, but Newcastle and Man U. Man U are like what, top 4 or 5 clubs in the world. They're huge, not in terms of their ability right now, but their stature. They're a huge club, and I think that they're even bigger than Man City, even with Man City's recent success over the last 10 years. Man U will be a game changer for it. And I think the more this goes on, the less we care about, and it'll just become the norm, really.
Graham, and yourself?
Yeah, listen, like Man U, the 3 biggest clubs in the world are Man U, Real, and Barca. So, of course, Man U are a huge proposition to anyone. Taking away the morality thing, if that was part of the question, I think for me, a lot of these big groups, the ones, the Middle Eastern groups with all the money in the world, my worry is just purely about ruining the game, because how many clubs do they go to? How many clubs are pumped with so much money? Not everyone can win the league, not everyone can win the Champions League. So all we're doing is putting so much money, like unbelievable amounts of money, into squads and teams that all can't win. So how does that do for the rest of the Premier League? Are we then going to take away the competitiveness? So actually, I think it's an easy one for me. Honestly, my heart and hand, I wouldn't want a group like this investing in Scottish football, and I wouldn't want a group like this investing in Rangers. Yes, would I want a bit of money pumped in relativity to see us perform better? Yeah, but all it does is, as I say, then somebody buys into Celtic, and then again, only one of us can win the league. Only one of us can go so far in Europe. So for me in the Premier League, it's the same. Too much money, like the too much cook spoil the broth and all those kind of sayings. Where is it going to stop in the Premier League? So we'll see. In terms of morality, you've got other sports that F1, I think wrestling, etc., maybe boxing, they all go out to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. You maybe don't hear as much. So I don't know. It's a very muddy kind of debate as well. One that I don't really know enough about to put my own opinion in. But certainly when it comes to investing into football teams, I think there really needs to be a ceiling on the amount of money that can be put in the financial fair play, certainly tightened, for sure.
See, just playing devil's advocate, and I don't know if I'm maybe just a wee bit too low level in my thinking here, but there's going to be more Middle Eastern consortiums than there is Premier League clubs. There is. So if 10, 12 consortiums end up buying 10, 12 different Premier League clubs, does that no level out the playing field? And I know it's just, it ends up putting in ridiculous money, but if there's 10, 12 clubs with the same amount of money, does it no level it out?
But then what does that do for so we're talking about a roundabout of teams going up and down between the Championship, the same kind of 6 to 8 teams up and down every year. Then it waters down the competitiveness, in my opinion. I just don't see it any way where it enhances the game. And surely it then waters down the talent and kind of the rest of the other leagues in Europe, and then you've suddenly just got a domination of England. I don't know. I just, it doesn't sit right that you're going to have all these constant big hitters buying clubs and just putting all this money into them. The Man City, sorry Jamie, 1 second.
No,
The,
it's
the
okay.
Man City point of view, if they all come in like Man City and how Man City run themselves now, that's a different pathway to, for example, how they came in, or what Todd Bowley's doing at Chelsea, for example. Now, Man City have built a whole, I mean, they're not just what they're doing in the football ground. They've got the women's team are probably the biggest. They've got their training ground and small stadium across. If those guys walked away from that club now, they would be stable. Whereas if Todd Bowley, for example, walked away from Chelsea tomorrow and nobody came in, what are Chelsea building, for example? What am I going to build? So I don't know. Are Newcastle going to go down that route? It all depends on what routes they go as well. But I don't know. I just think there's going to be a bubble and it's got to burst at some point.
I think for me, and I've got to be careful because obviously Liverpool are going through a very similar transition. However, John Henry's come out today and said that he's not looking to sell the club; he's looking to get investment. It's probably going to come from a Qatari-based investor, really. But I think the early, Colin, is if Chelsea went for 2.5 billion and an additional billion pumped into the team, so 3.5 billion, Man United are easy 5 billion at least. And for the level of stature that they are, who's walking about with 5 billion money these days? That they could drop onto a team. There is only a handful of clientele you would look at, and one would be some American consortium that's now it's being hosted right now as one of the options for Manchester United, or a Qatari state, governance, if you like. There's not many individuals, shall we say, that just love the club and are able to punt that kind of money into it. So I do think it becomes a bit muddied in terms of who's available to do these investments. Um, I think, Graham, what you said is, when it comes, if you were to have so many teams with all this money and that yo-yo of teams from the championship coming up, I would argue that actually happens already. The teams that naturally come up are normally naturally the teams that go back down, and it probably has been like that for a period of time. I don't necessarily think oil states or shall we say big investors change that. I think what it does is it changes the landscape across Europe because a lot of the bigger leagues probably then we see it now. They're talking about breaking away to these European super leagues to try and improve their own revenues because they can't get these additional funds coming in. So I do think that the Man United sale probably does set a precedence, though, of where we go with it going forward. I think the Newcastle one, they've been very, very smart about it, but it's probably due to financial fair play at the moment because they can't go out and spend 400 million in one window because they've not had that kind of revenue. Um, so it's definitely going to be a testing time. I remember when Newcastle were being looked at taking over. In my opinion, there was a lot of fans calling them out on their ethics, their policies, their human, the human policies of slavery and not slavery, sorry, but the slave labor, shall we say? I don't hear those kind of things happening now. If anything, the only thing I'm hearing now is anybody but the Glazers. And I think that's obviously, I think you said it very first, Colin. We're very hypocritical as fans. We just want the quickest and instant most success we can probably get right now. So it definitely is going to be an interesting time. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Glazers actually went, we've actually found more investment. We're going to stay and keep the club.
I just think in terms of when you mentioned the yo-yo, I think in the last few years, for example, I don't know. I just feel like it has been a bit more competitive in terms of the teams. For example, at this moment in time, potentially you have all the three teams that got promoted last season not going down. I just feel if this bubble gets bigger within the Premier League, then you are definitely going to have that kind of. Obviously, the parachute payments, etc., all work in the favour, and it means club can stabilise and stuff, and it makes the Championship probably a stronger and better league. I just think I don't get where do these clubs stop being bought? At what point does this investment? Because right now you've got Tottenham fans wanting Levy out, so they're a massive football club that have probably the best, most up to date stadium in the world right now. You're going to imagine they're not going to go for cheap. Let's say they go for the kind of 2 billion mark or something like that. So when does it stop? What clubs aren't going to have this? I don't know. It's
It was
it's an
it was in the
interesting
news.
one.
It was in the news last week that actually Tottenham rejected the best part of 3.5 billion as an option. Somebody wanted to take them over, and apparently the guy, oh, I forget his name, but Daniel Evans he's obviously works alongside him, and the talk was that they expected that to be chump money. So what do they expect? Because they've obviously got a massive, big, brand new stadium, and they've all got all the development area around it. So they're looking at it obviously a bit bigger than just the football team.
Yeah, I'm assuming the stadium and kind of
Yeah.
what I think that was £1 billion at least. So I'm assuming that's obviously been put into the cost of the club. Obviously, that's interesting. I didn't actually know they'd rejected it. But yeah, I don't know. I just think football is definitely on a bit of a dangerous path, especially the Premier League. In just terms of there must be a ceiling. There must be a ceiling for money. There's got to be, surely, in terms of what can be spent, and then the disparity between certain teams. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see if the Super League happens. That's 60 teams, obviously, if that's meant to kind of bring it all closer together. So yeah, listen, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if Man U get bought. One thing I will say is the Old Trafford kind of falling into disrepairs is not that I'm a Man U fan by any means, but I've been to Old Trafford a couple of times, and it really is one of the better
Dated.
stadiums you'll bet. It's one of the better stadiums you'll go to, but yeah, it seems as though it's kind of been left to date a bit and fall into disrepair, which is a real shame, because it really is an unbelievable stadium.
I think if you believe the Ronaldo interview, they need a new jacuzzi, they need a new fax machine, all those kind of things have still been the same 20 years later, haven't they? But I want to turn the attention to the other side of the table now. Colin, your favourite subject the last couple of weeks, the Deitch effect, a massive 6-pointer for Everton. What was your thoughts on the outcome of the game, and did it go as you would expect?
This is what I was talking about last week, where Everton are going to be going out and beating the teams around them 2-3, 4-0. A lot of them will be turgid games, and they will be narrow wins, if anything. And I think the best Everton displays between now and the end of the season will come against the bigger teams when they're sitting in and hitting on the break. And but no, it was a really good 3 points for Everton. What a fantastic goal, by the way.
Did he mean it?
I don't think he did. No, I don't know. I don't
He
think
says he did.
Seamus Coleman. Aye, of course he did. Like, if I'd done it, I would claim it as well. Seamus Coleman's never tried to shoot like that in his life, and he's not going to start now in his mid-30s. He says he looked up and didn't see MD in the box. If he did look up, didn't see MD, he's just hit and hope somebody will run very quickly. But no, not to take it away, it was a fantastic finish, and from an Everton point of view, it's probably now what you're expecting for Deitch, racking up the points. Even the Liverpool game, it wasn't a terrible performance. I think we all said if Deitch was to be appointed the Everton manager, they'll be comfortable. So that's out of the relegation zone. Leeds, on the other hand, this was a massive chance for them to get a bit of stability, and I've actually liked the look of them under Skibala. I thought they were unlucky against Man U, and there was a wee bit of energy about them. And I was actually wondering, will he maybe be the interim manager between now and the end of the season? But from Leeds' point of view, I think you really need to get at least a point at Everton there.
The one I read this evening is that apparently they're looking at Ramon Vega as coming in as an interim manager for Leeds. So it does look as though they're still actively looking to bring somebody in. Graham, what was your thoughts on the game itself? Obviously, it was a big win for Everton.
Yeah, got to love big Sean Dyche, man. What a guy, what a hero. Listen, that's the kind of results that you would expect him to turn out under him. I'm not saying that, I'm not getting into the football he plays, etc., because I do still think he did play some really good, dominating football with Burnley when they did well. But when he's coming into a team that were in the relegation zone and 2 out of the first 3 games have won 1-0 at Goodison, getting the fans back inside, great result. Obviously, not so for Leeds. I think they will go down if they go down this interim manager route. Ramon Vega, there's a name I've not heard in a long time. I don't know where that one's came from. So I think they need to just get a manager that knows what they're doing and get them in. If I'm a Leeds fan and I'm looking at Skibala's interim, Ramon Vega, Harry Redknapp was being bandied about. These are not the names you want to hear when you're Leeds. So it'll be strange. That's an incredible mismanagement if they really appoint somebody poor when they've had a good couple of seasons under Bielsa, and then I still think Marsh was an okay appointment. But I mean that is a major mistake if they one go interim or 2 appoint some of the names that's been spouted about.
Yeah, it's obviously getting to the desperation point if they're still looking to try and bring somebody in. Um, and of another team that's absolutely been dire as recently, but probably pulled off their best win of the season, was Southampton against the high mighty flying Graham Potter's Chelsea. I'm not going to lie, I thought that was an absolute banker for Chelsea to kind of get themselves back up and running, and put to bed, the issue of rotation, the issue of people like João Felix and Mudryk. I was very, very surprised they didn't come away with that. But your thoughts on that, Colin, and also obviously on James Ward-Prowse and his free kicks.
Um, on Ward-Prowse, first of all, because I don't want to take away. We'll probably talk about what this means for Chelsea, but James Ward-Prowse, it's been to a couple of boys in the group chat, and they were saying, well, without joke, he's arguably one of the best free kick takers we've seen in the Premier League, and I don't think that's a ridiculous thing to say. He's fantastic, fantastic finisher for a set piece on Southampton itself. I don't think it's enough to spark life into their season. I still think they're going to go down rock bottom, but it gives them half a chance. That's one of the games when you're looking at between now and the end of the season. That is a game you would have wrote off. So it's 3 points more than what they would have been expecting. From a Chelsea point of view, it's just absolute dire, and it's just that was our worry about Potter, that he won't be able to manage this group of players consistently, and I think you see the pressure building on him with that post match interview.
Yeah, Graham. Obviously, I know you've been a fan of Graham Potter. What do you make of his rotation with the team itself, having that many good players at your disposal, and he's made so many rotations of teams and players, but he's also having these weird post game talks now. I think the one he came out with at the weekend was that he was surprised to see how well drilled Southampton were. This is a team that's at the bottom of the league and haven't won in like 12 games in the Premier League. For me, I'm thinking obviously if that was Klopp, I'm wanting him to come out and I'm wanting him to come out and say it's not acceptable. We'll make this right. There's just something different about Graham Potter's style, isn't there?
Just first things first, just to any Chelsea fans, if there are any Chelsea fans listening, I want to make a heartfelt apology for that defeat against Southampton. I obviously picked Chelsea as my last man standing pick, which is the sole reason that they would have got beat home to
The
Southampton.
kiss of death, if there is one.
Absolutely, I'd have been as well wiping my arse with that tenor. So yeah, apologies to all out there. So yeah, look, Potter, I think that it's bizarre. He's got this strange kind of relationship with the media just now, and I think that has a lot to do with a lot of these questions being asked about. Does he get angry? I don't know. It's just some of the questions getting spun at him. I think the media are potentially just trying to get something out of him. So whether that taking away any results how they're playing is kind of the cause for the way he's actually talking the media and some of the things he's saying. Look, in terms of his team selection, it is a bit baffling for me. Look, everyone knows the number 9 is one thing they do need. But when you've got Madueke and Fofana starting, and then on the bench you've got Mudryk, you've got Havertz, you've got Sterling, who, by the way, Sterling could have had a hat-trick at the weekend. Some of the chances he missed, I don't know how he didn't score. Maybe it's a bit of rustiness, I don't know. Look, I do like Graham Potter, and it'll be interesting to see what time he's given. But of course, as we've said many times, you only get as much time as the fans give you. Again, I don't know. I don't have a sense of what Chelsea fans are feeling completely. But right now, they're not going to get. I mean, right now they're battling to get into a European spot, never mind pushing for top 4. So it'll be interesting. It goes so far. I think he does need a big result at home against Borussia Dortmund. That's for sure. When that game comes around, so like we'll see how he goes. But I'm not sure the players are helping him out much just now either.
So here's a question. So surely we were saying this about Nathan Jones 2 weeks ago. he was having these weird post match, interviews. His selections weren't marrying up. What's different? Where's the
And
difference?
So for me, Graham Potter's got credit in the bank at this level.
Okay.
Nathan Jones, no disrespect, he's a very good Luton Town manager, and it was a bizarre appointment. With Graham Potter, you can see why Chelsea have appointed him. He's got credit in the bank, and I think there's an element, for me, an element of sympathy because Chelsea are a huge club, but they're a basket case of a club, and it's I think you need to be a bit mental. You take the job and do well in it as well. Nathan Jones in Southampton, he'd no credit in the bank Premier League, but Southampton have been a very well run club for the last 5-6 years at Premier League level. Obviously at the other end of the table. So I think there's probably more scope for Nathan Jones to go and do he doesn't have to achieve too much to do an acceptable job, whereas Graham Potter, it's a big task.
Okay, cool. I'm going to move on to another team now. So big wins for Bournemouth and Fulham. Obviously two different results. Bournemouth are obviously fighting at the bottom, and you've got Fulham who were up against away to Brighton, who probably not many people would have picked a Fulham without a Mitrovic to kind of get a result from Brighton. Graham, I'll come to you first. What's your thoughts?
on Brighton first, I think it kind of looked a bit like a smash and grab from Fulham at the weekend. From what obviously didn't watch the game, obviously, but from what we could see highlights wise, etc., it looked like a smash and grab job. But fair play to Fulham. We've talked about how well they're playing under Marco Silva, and it doesn't really look like they're going to pull up anytime soon. So yeah, I think they will end up finishing in a European place. In terms of Bournemouth, I think I've stopped shot from calling Gary O'Neill a useless bastard in recent weeks, to be honest. So, I mean, fair play to them. That is some result for Bournemouth when you look at the results. And yeah, Wolves under Lopetegui's just a bit. I don't know, just a wee bit up and down. It'll be interesting to see how they do next season. Obviously, they're going to up. I think they'll be safe, but yeah, a couple of surprise results, I guess. But huge one for Bournemouth, and the relegation battle really is so exciting. It's so exciting, and I'm just hoping it stays like this. As I've said in recent weeks, it always happens where it kind of you get this, and then a couple of teams start falling off. But I mean, it is a really exciting looking race just now to survive. So yeah, it's good. I hope this continues the next few weeks and teams like Bournemouth get random results like this, and maybe Southampton under this. God, his name escapes me. Under their interim coach just now. So yeah, we'll see. Sessa, is it Roman Sessa? Is that right? I might have pulled that out of thin air. Yeah, I'm getting a nod. So yeah, we'll see. It's good, but yeah, good result for Bournemouth. Fair play to them.
Colin, what do you think when Sean Dyche threw that emotional 6-pointer that he went through with Leeds to get back in the changing rooms and seen that Southampton had won and Bournemouth had won? What do you think that does for them? Obviously, they're trying to get as much momentum as they possibly can, but everybody else is still getting points around them.
I know. You're probably hoping that the Wolves do break away, but at the same time, they're only 2 points behind Wolves now. So the way Wolves are going, I think they will end up being safe, but I can see them being a bit closer to 18th than maybe 14th or 13th. I think they might need to up their game a wee bit. It is exciting. It, I love the relegation battle. In recent years, when it's been Man City breaking away with 100 points or whatever, the biggest bit of excitement has been for the Championship playoff place or the relegation battle in Premier League. Bournemouth, it's a great result for them, but I'm not too surprised. I said last week, thought they were very. It was very good to watch them against Newcastle. They took the game at Newcastle, didn't quite get the victory, but got a very well in point. It'll be interesting to see how it's going to be who manages the freak results, who manages most
Mhm.
freak results, because they'll all take points off each other and they'll kind of yo-yo up and down. It'll be these random results like Southampton taking points off Chelsea. If that happens a bit more, I think that'll start separating teams.
Cool. And Graham, we've got Brentford and Palace up next. Brentford, obviously, another draw, and Palace obviously picking up points. What's your thoughts on there?
Yeah, again, probably in the end, 2 points drop for Palace, obviously with a late goal for
Mhm.
Brentford. I think we spoke about Palace in the past, just about maybe worrying about their again inconsistencies of late. They have, to be fair, actually been a lot more consistent, but they're not winning. They're just picking up maybe
Yeah.
four draws in the last five. I still think that they are in real danger, and they could do with starting to pick up 3 points here and there. When you're looking at these teams starting to win at the bottom and get more sporadic wins like that, I mean, it's really starting to hot up from the bottom up to Palace. You're talking about 8 points just from relegation to Palace, 6 points. I mean, that is nothing. And I think realistically, Palace down, any of these teams could go down. So I do feel like really a big 2 points drop for them, and probably a much needed win. And I'm sure their support will be bitterly disappointed with that last minute equaliser for Brentford, obviously.
Colin, Palace rely a lot on Wilfred Zaha, who's unfortunately out injured at the moment. Lots of reports that his contract's up at the end of the summer. Do you see him staying in the UK, or do you see him going abroad? Is it time for him to move on to a bigger club? Is he going to get a bigger club?
I don't really know who takes him at who takes him in England. I mean, I think Brighton, where they are there now, would be a perfect fit. They need that kind of reliable forward. But I don't know if Brighton's a big enough name to tempt Wilfred Zaha. So I find the clubs who'd fit and he'd do well and who'd be looking at him. I don't really know if he'd fancy it. So I do see him maybe going abroad. I think he'd do well in Italy. Maybe top six in Italy. I think he'd suit that game. But nah, it'd be interesting to see. I think if he was maybe to go for like maybe a Brighton or something like that, he would do well. And when we were speaking the last couple of weeks, that it would probably be a hard transition for the like of that club to start attracting a higher caliber a player as opposed to the buying a £2 million player, turn them into a £30 million player. It's a big jump up. So I think you're right. I think he might go abroad.
Graham, for you?
I'd quite like to. I mean, God, I don't know if this is wild. I'd quite like to see Arsenal go for somebody like Zaha. Like I do think that when you look at the way they play, when you look at the type of player they want, and obviously more squad depth, I really think he'd be a good, solid player for Arsenal. Obviously, this is summer. I know I've said everything about me not liking the way they went about their business, but look, obviously, the summer window is different, and if you can get Zaha on a free, just looking at that, Palace haven't won this year yet. I actually didn't quite appreciate that, so I don't see him sticking about at Palace. That's for sure. I'm sure he loves the club, but I think this is kind of a roll of the dice. He went to Man U, didn't really work out for him. I really would like to see an Arsenal go for him.
I would have honestly thought Arsenal would have been perfect until they got Trossard. I think Trossard probably now fits that bill. That person that can come on and do both wings and play up front as well. So I'd be very surprised if they do still go for somebody like Zaha. As you said, now they've got a bit of squad depth about them, but I think he's definitely better than Palace. Be interesting to see where he ends up at the in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Newcastle came in for him, offering him big wages, to kind of fill out their squad. Um, St. Maximin's obviously really good, but he always gets a lot of injuries. So when we're talking about rotation, he could offer that to them. I was kind of going to bring us on to our last game. There was a London derby in the 4 o'clock kickoff on Sunday between Tottenham and West Ham. Um, Tottenham leaving it late, needing Son to come off the bench to kind of kickstart them. But I suppose my question is really more about West Ham and David Moyes. So they've now dropped into the bottom three. Colin, what's your thoughts on that? And is there a real danger of them? I know we've kind of skipped them because we've always thought that they would actually get back out of the trouble, but the goals have kind of really dried up for them, haven't they?
Aye, I think it's what one win out of the last six. A couple of draws in there, and they were never that. They've never been comfortable enough this season where they can just start relying on draws. They do need to start getting some points on the board quickly, especially after what we've been saying. Some of these teams are pulling out the odd freak result. I don't know. I don't know if I see West Ham pulling it back. I think they'll maybe jump between 18th and 16th, but I think they're going to be there right to the end of the season, and they'll not be rock bottom, but they will be teetering around that top relegation space and the bottom safe space, if you like.
Graham, West Ham's defensive record has been way better than their attacking record. Do you think that's going to be pivotal to how they finish to the season?
I think it's interesting with West Ham. Actually, in terms of, I feel like the last 4 games in the Premier League, they've picked up 5 points. I know they've slipped into the relegation zone. I really don't see them getting relegated. One thing that might go against them, I don't know, it can depend. Look, they've still got European football. That's going to kick-start for them again. Mm-hmm. They obviously finished top of the table in the Conference League, so they'll go straight into the last 16. They got through in the FA Cup. So potentially for West Ham, it's going to come to a point where, like, what's more important? Obviously, league survival for them, but I don't think it's going to come to that. I think it would be mental to sack Moyes, and I think they'll get out it. Defensive, not great. West Ham have always been a funny bit of a team. Like, I don't know. Sometimes you look at their transfer record, not amazing. Some of the players they buy. Look, it's going to be interesting to see how they get on. I don't think they'll get relegated. I do think they'll pick up enough wins over the course of the kind of the second half of the season. But yeah, I would definitely keep Moyes if I was him.
I think the difference is at the moment is the fans are starting to call for Moyes, and I think we spoke about other teams where the pressure is coming from the fans. I think I seen this morning that David Moyes is actually 40-11 odds on to actually get the bullet at some point, which doesn't bode well. I'm with you. I don't think West Ham get relegated. I think they do enough to stay out of it. It's whether or not David Moyes obviously gets that chance to probably see it out. I think if Moyes was to leave, I think that's a different kettle of fish. Colin, sorry, you want to jump in?
Just looking at West Ham's next few games, like taking out the FA Cup one, so they're at home, Nottingham Forest, away to Brighton, home to Villa, away to Man City, then home to Southampton. If we are serious about West Ham staying up, I think they need to get 4 points at least out of the home games at Nottingham Forest and Villa, because I don't see them picking up points at Brighton or Man City. Then it will come down to depending how the games go, it could be a huge game against Southampton in the end of March.
You also have to take into consideration, I get if West Ham fans are starting to call for him, but if you look at Southampton and Leeds just now, they're without a manager and there's not any real clear front runner. So who are West Ham going to get in if they sack Moyes? And this is something else that they need to really think about. I do think Moyes is the best guy to steer them clear. And yes, Colin says, I think those next few games will be important, and it is how they balance against the specifically the Conference League.
I think Jesse March is still kicking about in London somewhere, and I think he's trying to get a free hotel again. Well, guys, that's kind of wrapped up the weekend's football. As ever, it's obviously been good to kind of catch up and just talk about football in general. We will be back next week, and by next week we will have obviously the first cup final in England would have been completed. So on Sunday we've got Newcastle versus Manchester United in the League Cup final. So hopefully we will be toasting a Newcastle win, and Man United have won nothing, but that's just me. But Colin, really appreciate the opportunity to kind of host this and to obviously kind of get around the table and have a chat with you. Graham, as ever, it's always good to pick your brains. But until next time, thank you very much, and thanks for listening.